All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Rettelberger, president of EAMC. Thanks for your patience as we were hoping some folks get through the waiting room there. I see a few more are joining in the waiting room as we speak. Excited to get started today, but before we do, I just wanted to briefly share a couple of very quick updates. First, as most of you know, June is the month where we usually host the conference, and believe me, we all truly wish we were sitting together in some big hotel ballroom right now. The officers have been meeting weekly and in many cases working daily to provide programming through our EAMC at home sessions like this and working on new ideas for the future. So if you have an idea for a future session, we've got some great stuff lined up. We're working on a great session about mental health on the road and some survey results and some different things. But if you have a great idea that you want to share, something that would impact you and maybe your situation, maybe you're furloughed and you're feeling something a little bit different, you think, hey, this would be a great topic for us to touch on, please feel free to reach out to us through the EAMC website or the Facebook message board. Now, for those of you who are looking for a chance to socialize, we will be announcing a virtual happy hour. Those plans are coming soon. We're going to be having a full board meeting. So we're going to get the board together for a full meeting next week, where we're going to discuss options for 2021 and beyond. People are asking you, hey, what's the plan? Where are we going to be? What's going to happen? There's so much up in the air, and there's a lot of different contingencies and things that we're evaluating right now, and some financial implications for all those decisions. So as soon as we do have a decision, believe me, we'll be very excited to share that with you. Now, for something serious and very important, the term uncertain times has been overused, right? We're also sick of that term in the last few months, but there's one thing that I am very certain of, and that is that we as EAMC need to very clearly move forward as a conference and organization that is anti-racism. You may have seen that we did release a statement following the death of George Floyd, and we did put a lot of thought into it. There were so many calls and emails, and even what we put out, it didn't say everything we wanted to say. However, I so strongly feel that what we say is important, but what we do is so much more important, and that the action we take is what's truly important. So today, I'm very pleased to announce that at next week's board meeting, I'm going to be proposing that we put together a diversity and inclusion committee. We are not going to solve this issue anytime soon, but it's so important that we continue to take steps in the right direction. Now, this committee, diversity and inclusion, will consider everything: races, ethnicities, genders, ages, religions, disabilities, sexual orientations. That's a lot, right? But how can we do better? How can we do better in every aspect of the conference, from our internships, to our panels, to our attendees, to our planning committee, to our board members, to our executive team, and most importantly, how can we impact our industry? So if you have interest in leading this group, or you have interest in being a part of this group, and let me be honest, I don't know exactly what form this committee takes. That's one of the things we'll have to discuss. But if you are interested, you can please reach out to me directly. My email address is rettelberger.1@osu.edu. I know that's a lot of letters there, but you can also send an email through the Contact Us link there at the EAMC website. So if you have interest in that, I'd love to hear from you because we're definitely making that a priority. Okay, so now we've got a lot to discuss here, and we're going to discuss a lot of the social issues and reopening and many things, and we've been working on some great content for you today. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and turn your camera on, as we want to see all your faces. And then if you have a question today, or your comments, there's a hands up button there. You should see that on the bottom toolbar, and you can put your hand up, and we can reach you that way. You can also ask a question through the chat. Please try to keep the chat focused, but if you do have a question, you can send that. If you want to keep it anonymous, you can send it just to Jim Delaney, and he will have a chance to take a look at that. So with that said, let me turn things over now. Let's get things started. I appreciate your patience here. A longtime friend of EAMC, the legendary Jim Delaney.
There you go. Can you hear me? Dave, thanks, and Kirk and Paul and Vanessa and everybody's been working to put these sessions together, and Thank you for allowing it to be meetings and not another webinar, because I was going to shoot myself if I have to sit through another Zoom webinar and just watch 3 people. Because this is what, at least personally, what I've been missing and feeling connected. Like we should have all been together in Minneapolis. I would have had to miss this year anyways for my daughter's high school graduation, which that's not happening either. So it's cool for me just to flick through all these photos and videos. So definitely turn your screen on. Another reason we thought to do it in this style is the messaging efforts of all that's going on, and frankly, the traumatic experiences of the last couple months is impossible. None of us know what the hell we're doing. There's not a panel we can put together with 3 or 4, industry experts to have any sense. It's really thinking it's important to have more of a discussion here and more of a town hall. So definitely please be a part of this. We grabbed a few people who we can lean on to make sure they would say something. But hopefully all of you can contribute in some way, shape, or form here. I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if I can do this here. 1 second. Can you guys all see that? Kurt, give me a thumbs up. All right. So what I thought might be helpful is just to take 5 minutes to kind of set the table. At least to kind of give a sense for me of a framework. I tried to get it out of my head and on into this sort of deck last night, to kind of, for us to sit back and realize what we're all going through. And I had 2 tracks that have been going through my head for the last 3 months. And the first track is really that 7 stages of grief, or, where it starts as some pain, the loss of a friend or family member, whatever it is. And we all know we go through that initial stage of denial. And I think COVID in particular has been just an incredible traumatic experience where there's economic pain and there's, loss of jobs. And so that disbelief stage, like, I can't believe this thing is even happening, to anger, this is ridiculous. These politicians have no idea what they're doing. How could this happen? My wife is a nurse practitioner, so she was going into the hospitals for at least a month with no protective equipment. So you go through those stages to that bargaining of like, okay, fine, let's take this 2 weeks, let's take a month, whatever it is, and then we can all get back to business, making the trade-offs. A lot of us, we're in that depression mode at a certain point, feeling hopeless and helpless. How am I going to do this? I can't, my business can't make it through this. Right. And eventually to a point of acceptance, like, okay, this is what we're at. Here's where we are. And I think only once you move through that process can you get to this sort of recovery mode where you can start thinking of action. And I was talking to people like, how can you be expected to start working on messaging if you're still stuck in the anger mode? Like, I'm still pissed off. I can't think about how we're going to get ready for opening. And I've been using that kind of framework of like almost every other day. All right, where am I at in the process? Am I, am I still sort of feeling hopeless and depressed, or am I angry today? And this other, marrying that up with this other spectrum of, okay, we got to get to work and get to action. And last year I had a chance to take this class at Harvard Business School on the business of entertainment, media, and sports. And it was spectacular. And a place like Harvard is all about action, right? They're trying to teach leadership and change and business strategies. So I've been getting this wealth of information that they were pumping out early on with COVID. They set up, this is the website, if you can see it, it's hbswk.hbs.edu. And they had set up this COVID-19 Business Impact Center with a ton of phenomenal information, how businesses are getting through, what leadership strategies there are. And there was an article that helped me a lot in in March when everything kind of hit of, oops, hold on, lost you. And it was really one of these kind of 7 C's of leadership principles that are helping businesses and executives get through this time. Right, and they talked about really it's taking clarity of being able to have perspective and to see what's coming down the line before you can create any changes. Confidence, having that calm leadership, a positive influence, moving down the track of how important communications is, but not just communication, but a strategic plan for how you're communicating, what that consistent level of communication is. This compassion of, communicating, but with empathy and understanding of, again, where people are at on that previous track. So if we're pushing out messages, but, I'm looking at Paul here, Paul's just been laid off, or people are on furloughs, having a lot more compassion in how we're messaging. And collaboration that like this, nobody knows, everybody's on an island, nobody knows exactly what they should be doing. So staying connected and collaborative. Cash flow, which I would just change to like livelihood, obviously in a business sense, the revenue and expenses of a business, but just personally, as soon as something hits, okay, what am I doing? How am I going to get through this? And then community, even I would say this EAMC as a community, but obviously all of your venues that are core to your venue. People are looking to these venues for support to get through this. So this has been, for me, these 2 tracks that have been stuck in my head. And I was hoping that for the purposes of this conversation, we could kind of address both, that sort of below the line piece of it, of how everyone's doing, what things you've been doing to cope and get through this personally, a lot of the more internal stuff, and then get from there, hopefully still to what we all had wanted to talk more about on that above the line thing, like what things are you doing that are working? What do you have to share? All of that kind of sense of progress and how we keep it moving. Because I don't know about anybody else, but personally, I feel like I'm living the real life Chutes and Ladders game that I used to play as a kid. If anybody's old enough to remember this game, where, everyone's starting at this bottom level, and there's certain days and certain weeks, I feel like, all right, I got this. I'm on that, I'm through the grief and the pain track, and I'm on to making actions, and I'm making progress, and I landed on the ladder, and I went up 10 steps, and then something happens, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm right back. I just get knocked down 3 more steps, right? So early on, I felt like it was helpful to have that Band-Aid ripped off real quickly, those first few days of everything sort of shutting down. And I could be like, okay, I'm into action mode. I gotta figure out what the hell this SBA loan stuff is. I gotta, check in on clients and friends. And, but I got right to action. And we started working with our friends at the Minnesota Wild and changing what was going to be an in-person corporate partnership summit into a virtual partnership series. And, it felt like, all right, this is great. And we can get more access. We can do stuff with players that we might not have been able to do previously. We were planning a big social fitness festival with thousands of people coming together to sweat all over each other, which would no longer be allowed. So he said, all right, well, let's turn that into a virtual festival on National Fitness Day. And it was cool to see a lot of, a handful of your guys' faces. I got to see Vanessa Cromer sweating in her little apartment. And, but I felt like, all right, we're figuring this thing out as we go, and we can make something of it. And then, I'm in Boston, and we were hit really hard, really early. So I think that partly helped get through that grief process quicker, because we felt it here. And I would be talking to people in other cities and other states, and they might have 50 deaths in their whole state. And we were already at 5,000 deaths in Massachusetts. So again, I think people are all at a different end of the spectrum of how they're feeling about this. And, personally, I was like, all right, I'm making progress. We're going to put some stuff together. And then, a friend of mine post on Facebook that actually several friends had tested positive, and a couple were hospitalized and got out. And a friend, Donna, is posting, please, please, please take this seriously. I'm going to fight through this. And then she died a few weeks ago. So I think I'm going up a ladder, and I am immediately down the chute to like, holy crap, somebody I know just died of this, somebody my age. And I felt like I was back to the disbelief stage of like, oh God, all right. So, I think it's a challenge when you're back on that track of shooting back down the ladder into, into disbelief or anger, to then now, oh, hey, by the way, got to get on a Zoom call, and we're going to talk about, we've been working with ASM Global on their communication strategy, their brand around how they're going to roll out safety protocols to 300 plus venues. I know a lot of you are doing that for your individual venues, or Marissa or Ike for, the larger entities. But, I had to like sit with that first track and say, okay, I'm not great for this couple days, and it's going to be hard for me to get back and just start right into business again. But then I think you get back on track, and we're like, okay, let's work on this. Let's create these plans. Let's get our communications and our messaging right, and our partners, and so I think now I'm back on track. We're going, and then Minneapolis is burning, right? And you're watching what's happening, and it's I feel like I'm right back down a chute to a certain level, maybe not to disbelief, because this shit is happening all the time for years and years. So it's not like I didn't believe this happened, but I'm back to the anger phase and sitting with that of, okay, how do we move forward? And we talked about it as a smaller group here with just this session of like, what are we doing? We're going to have a session and talk about reopening messaging when all of this stuff is going on around us. Like, we're not okay. And I had a call, actually one of the women who was in our Harvard Business School cohort last year, she's an executive with ESPN, and she had sent us all a text. She's a Black woman, and said, look, check in on all of your Black friends, because we're not okay. And I was thinking to myself, like, none of us are okay. Like, this is awful. Like, but she really was like, it's really difficult. Like, how can I be expected to get on the next ESPN Disney Zoom call and talk about how we're going to, move the business forward and be leaders in our industry when all hell is breaking loose in our communities? And so I think this was a quote I read in the Boston Globe yesterday. We're in a new season, a different time, a moment for us to act and do differently, and we long for a system to make concrete changes. And I felt like I just needed to just set the table for this conversation of, how is everybody doing that? Sort of, if we can all kind of talk about the below the line stuff of how you're feeling, how you're coping, and still allow us to get through some of that and still get to best practices and what's everyone doing and successful, the action part of it, and how we're helping each other move forward. And I have, there's tons of research and stuff too. Now, obviously that spectrum of where everyone is at, I know all of us are going to be on any given day at a different point in the spectrum of grief, whether we've fully accepted and we're moving on, or we're back to anger or whatever. We're at different stages on that leadership graph of how we're acting. And then geographically, like, this is completely different. Your messaging in Arkansas is completely different than what that messaging is going to be in Boston. But I've loved seeing some of the research that's starting to come out, because really it's only now where we're going to have that shift, I think, to that next level of, okay, here are the markets that are most likely getting back in action sooner. Here's ones that are going to be slower to go. Here's ones that are going to take probably a hell of a long time to get back to action. But it's nice to finally, I feel like as an industry, at least getting to this point where we can be tracking how likely it is and when we might be getting back, versus 2 months ago where you're like, I have no idea if this is going to be 6 months or 16 months or, and even, I don't know if anybody's seen it, I can share it in the chat. This music, some of those were sports research. Some of it's now happening on ticketing and music, but this was a cool one that I think Ticket IQ has done, where it's every 2 weeks they're updating it on that how safe it is. There's some safety indexes and which markets that it'll be quicker to come back from. So anyhow, that was my set the table. Sorry, it was longer than I thought it would be. But I'd love to, I know we've got a handful of people to kind of get this conversation going. And Tammy had, just before this call, had sent me a few examples of things that they were doing. And maybe if we start the conversation of what everyone's been doing internally, with your people, your staff. We've had tons of furloughs, tons of layoffs. So a sense of what's happening within your particular organizations. And Tammy, I'll maybe throw it to you in advance because you had sent me some stuff that you guys had done.
Yep, happy to do that. So the slide that Jim just had up was in our trying to stay in touch with our part-time staff, because like many of you we locked our doors on March 16th. We had a waitress on March 12th that we got in, and then we had a dance competition that Friday, Saturday, Sunday that the university kind of let us sneak in with extra mitigation efforts to allow that to happen. And then we locked our doors on March 16th and have not seen anybody since. So in our working with trying to keep our, not only our full-time staff, but our part-time staff engaged, on National Hamburger Day, we did a cookout. So the photo showed our kitchen staff in, properly masked, and people could drive up to the parking lot, and we just went out and took if they wanted a hamburger or a cheeseburger and ran back and got it, and had some really nice interaction. We had 120 out of our, 200 staff, part-time staff show up. So a good number of people, all of them, most of our event staff are 60 plus easily. So it was a nice interaction for us, at least with our part-time staff. And then we also did a cookie drop too for anybody that wanted cookies. We, like many of you, probably had food in the kitchen that needed to be used. So we've been supplying food banks, doing helping out on any events that might be in the community that we thought that some of that food could go to, and we had 1,300 cookies. And so we did cookie drops to our subscribers and to our part-time employees. So those are a couple of things we've been doing.
Timmy, you've had a bunch of layoffs or furloughs, or what's happening there?
We did. We on June 5th, we laid off 15 employees out of our 24. That was mostly because of a transition we're going through, actually. So COVID just made it harder, and it made us that we weren't together. We knew in February, because of the transition to athletics of 2 of the 3 venues on campus, that we were going to have some layoffs. But we also thought that out of those 15, that 10 of them were going to have jobs. But because of COVID and the fact that there's no events and they're just not sure about what football's going to do, or that if football comes back, it's 30,000 tickets instead of 62,000 tickets. Yeah, it's been challenging as the person that has to make those decisions and deliver those decisions. So yeah, we've been we were able to just on I think June 1st, the governor lifted the 10 people so we could gather more than 10. So we were able to have a goodbye on June 5th. Again, food out of the kitchen. So random, like bacon wrapped chestnuts with an almond cake and some baked beans and some Philly steak. So we were using whatever it was, but we were able at least get together. And then we'll look at, we just moved yesterday. I moved our last event from the fall on our series into 2021. So we will be discussing additional furloughs probably.
Marissa.
So we're on a university, we're on a university campus. There's not a whole lot of money coming towards the arts. They're worried about students and student loans and professors. So, I'm Paul. As soon as I heard, we connected because I was on the other side of that, and I understand how difficult these times are.
Marissa, what's going on in Oakview land, and how have things been with you guys?
Well, from a corporate standpoint, we've been really strong. Tim made it his mission to retain as much of the staff as possible. So thankfully on a corporate front, no one's been laid off, no one's been furloughed. He's been holding bi-monthly Zoom meetings with everyone and just connecting with them, keeping everyone's spirits up. So that's been really good for corporate. Also, our corporate is full steam ahead on trying to, with all the reopening efforts, the Wellness Institute, creating a task force to help with all the venues in the reopening. So, corporate-wise, we're busier than ever. Unfortunately, from the venue front, we did have to furlough a lot of our staff. So pretty much my whole marketing team is gone. I try to connect with them as often as possible. I thrive off of collaboration and talking with my team, and not having them there as a resource has been difficult. So I try to connect with them, make sure, one of the first things I did is when I heard that each of them were going to be furloughed, I picked up the phone and called them and said, I just want you to know it has no reflection of you. Don't take it personally. I know it's hard not to. I know you look at it as like, what did I do or what didn't I do? But I just wanted to reiterate to them that it wasn't them, that it was, unfortunately in the circumstances and financially, it was just something that if they want a venue to be there after we get through this, it's just a step we have to get through right now. So, the last connection I had with some of them, they're excited. They want to come back. They're ready to come back. Some were definitely hurt. So we're pushing as quick as we can to, get our team back in line from a venue standpoint, because, like all of us here, we thrive off of collaboration and meeting and connecting. And, on the other thing I do is I help support our Arena Alliance marketing efforts. And so we've been holding bi-monthly Zoom calls with the marketing team from the Arena Alliance. And we've been trying to share best practices. We've been talking about what people are doing digitally, staying connected with the community, staying connected with their fans, surveys about fan sentiment. So, in the light of it, everyone is moving forward as best and as positive as they can in this situation.
How have you guys tackled the Black Lives Matter and internal communications? From an outside perspective, it looks like Tim is very compassionate leader and is very sensitive to those kinds of issues and how they're impacting everybody. But what's been the process in?
We had our last town hall Zoom was right after the murder of George Floyd, and Tim was very upset, as was pretty much, everyone on the call, and he's made it his mission to create a diversity and inclusion effort within OVG. And so they're working on forming that committee and making those efforts. So as we're in the hiring process throughout all of our venues, our current ones and the ones we're in the process of building, that diversity and inclusion is going to be one of the #1 priorities for OVG moving forward. Honestly, it's just, it's, as everyone knows, it's a disturbing situation that has happened and is occurring, and it has to change. And, I just hope that we can do it quick enough to start making an impact in people's lives.
Yeah, and it's, it's become a global thing too, Adam. You were saying there's been a lot of protests in Toronto, and what's the feel there with the movement?
Yeah, I mean, although we are north of the border and we're a different country, it's very much the same sentiment here, right? I mean, there is no border when it comes to those sort of issues, right? It's felt globally, and Toronto is no different. You know, I think there's a lot more work that it needs to be done in Toronto, and a lot of people are taking it seriously, but then there's a lot of people that think it is only an American issue, right? And that's certainly not the case. Going back to your first question of how are we dealing with that internally, you know, I think MLSE is doing an okay job with taking it seriously, and there's a lot of change that we need to do internally at any organization, but we're recently posting, even though we're in a job freeze, we are hiring a diversity and inclusion director, which will be integrated into the teams across the entire organization, and I think that's step number one. We've also done a lot of different webinars and started to really get our employee group, which is about 800 full-time staff, together to try and learn more. And I think that's step number one. And you know, there's a lot more steps that we're going to be taking. But yeah, long story short, Toronto's no different.
Mm-hmm. And Shani, you know, I thought you guys had an interesting approach to social and response. You want to talk through that?
Well, social and response as it relates to what has been happening recently, or what has been happening since
well, part of your response was no response.
I'll take a step back just a sec. I am intently concerned with mental health. I'm concerned about the mental health of the people who were quickly transitioned, whether that's furloughed, laid off. I'm concerned about the people who are still working. This is something that's never happened before in anyone's lifetime. And when we talk about marketing strategies and social and digital and what are we going to do to build trust so that people want to come back to our venues again, the first thing we have to do is build trust among ourselves and among each other as teammates. We can't just come back and wave a magic wand that on X date, we're all going to come back and we're going to, you know, sing camp songs and have hot dogs around the fire, or vegan dogs or turkey dogs or whatever it is that you eat, or not for some people who don't participate in hot dogs. It's so important. And I can't, you know, everyone knows that, you know, everyone says, oh, I'm not my job. I'm calling BS on that. Everyone who's probably on this call, we do hire people for their passion. We hire people for their standards of excellence. And when something this traumatic happens, we have to acknowledge the separation in order to move forward. As part of that, we also have to realize as marketers, yes, we're building trust with people to come back and our fans, but we have to build trust amongst each other. We have to have some real honest conversations. Part of those honest conversations are around specifically race and justice. And either you're on one side or the other. There's no middle ground. It's good because there is no gray area as far as I'm concerned. That being said, as marketers, a lot of times we are responsible for interacting with as many folks as our guest services people do in terms of managing the brand of the venue, managing the interaction and individual experience, and then facilitating that throughout, and certainly trafficking that throughout the organization. That being said, I'd like to liberate personally all the marketers that you can only do what you can do. You can certainly reflect your personal views, but if you can't fulfill that brand promise, it's not up to you. So I want to liberate the brand marketers by feeling that, you know, the venue is doing too much, not enough, whatever that is. You can only do what you can do. Your voice matters. So using your words is important, and then also recognizing when it's important to use your silence. You have to defer to leaders to be able to set that tone and hold other people accountable. I know ASM and others have come out with programming and marketing and tools, and I know OVG has a program, and there's lots of other people doing things. This is a long answer, Jim, and I really don't even remember the question.
Or is yours? I don't know.
But it's important.
But Shani, at a certain point, didn't you guys decide to not post? You were saying,
We
like,
did eventually post, and I'm going to call out our digital strategist who's on the call. There was a statement eventually. I thought that leading up to Blackout Tuesday that she was going to have a moment where I might get a knock on my door when we were still quarantined saying, hey, we need to do something. Hello, are you reading any of your phones? I am reading my phones. It's important for her to know that, you know, I appreciate her values, but we need a statement that everyone can be held accountable to. So that statement was posted later. I think she's okay now. I don't expect her to be traveling to my door to knock on that. But marketers need to be just very, very mindful that we are, we all have the martyr syndrome and we take everything so personally. At some point, we kind of have to get a little bit cerebral on these things. That ends my TED Talk.
Well, I think there's a lot of sensitivities around too, right? People wanting to say something, not wanting to say the wrong thing, angst over the language. What are you calling other people? What are you saying? Or taking the lead of your team in some regards of like, well, it's probably safe to just repost what the team is posting. Or, so I think Juneteenth is tomorrow. So many people had no idea what the hell Juneteenth was until last week, you know? So now it's, oh, what should I post on these days? What should I be doing? How am I being sensitive? And, you know, so Dave, was it you who said, what are you guys doing? Black businesses or?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, so we identified a African-American blogger who had put together a great list of a couple hundred minority-owned businesses, specifically focused on Black businesses in the region. And so we're going to share that tomorrow morning across social. And then our athletic director, Gene Smith for Ohio State, has been a great leader on this, and he's going to be posting some content himself that we're able to share. So one of the big things that when we look at whether it's Juneteenth or Pride is maybe we don't have the right things to say, but maybe there are other voices that we can amplify as part of our community. And we take pride in being part of our community, and having the courage to be disliked is so important these days, right? Because everybody's so nervous about doing something. And I know that personally, I was silent for way too long because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. But I'm going to take those risks now. And so that's what I'm looking for is maybe there's a local pride group that is in your town that's active that you can amplify those voices. And actually, when we've shared that, we've actually seen some really positive reactions to it. Is there going to be negative stuff? Of course, it's social media. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible place to live. But we're going to do our part to make it better and be part of our community, because I do believe that that's a commitment we need to make.
Well, we have to have courageous conversations, right? And you don't have to feel like you're the expert, subject matter expert on everything walking out your front door. So there are resources in your, at your fingertips, literally, both in your individual communities as well as across the globe. When we try to be, and that's another thing we talked about during this time, how do we maintain a conversation with folks? And we talked about it before the conversation was, how do I maintain a relevant conversation? And all I have to say is, please buy tickets. Well, now we don't have any tickets to sell at this particular time. And please don't refund your tickets is probably not the best message. So how do we maintain those connections with our fans and our guests so that we are still part of relevant conversations, as well as being mindful and respectful of the significant things that everyone is dealing with? It's a lot of heavy stuff. So it's a balancing act, Jim.
Yeah, but that's a good point. And I think we just got an anonymous question in that same line of, there's no one size fits all for all of this. And all of us have a different perspective, and not only might be on a different edge of the spectrum in stages of grief or in action, but also in the political spectrum. And we're living in the most politicized environment. So certainly on the action side of the venue reopenings, that all depends. You can have the greatest toolkit ever for whoever, but it depends on who are you in a red state, a blue state? Who's your mayor? What's the relationship with the mayor and the city council? And who's, I don't know if anybody from the BLK Center's on here, but, ASM was working on all these plans, and protocols and how they would roll out. And Trump decides he's going to have a rally in Tulsa, and the governor and the mayor are all for it. And all right, let's, roll with it. So I think there's a lot of, I'll throw it out to everybody, but especially this core panelist, how do you suggest navigating internally if you maybe are, want to be posting more on Black Lives Matter, or think the company or your venue should be doing more, but you might have a GM or others in decision making who are saying no, like we're not going to do that. Tammy, how have you guys navigated it, in Middle America?
In middle, pretty homogeneous America for sure. We did post on Monday morning after George Floyd's murder, and we just did a simple one. It was a blue screen with "Injustice Must End." We didn't know what else to say at that time. We wanted to be, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, even when we were talking about Juneteenth. We want to make sure we're authentic. I mean, we don't want to just start posting a bunch of stuff when we haven't addressed it before or had not been doing anything on it. As I shared yesterday, we started earlier in the year, probably right around Black History Month in February, and it was because I had been going through a different process in a class that I teach, and looking at it with a diversity and inclusive lens on, and realized that all of the quotes I was using in my monograph were from white men. And that's one of the ways you can start adding voices in to what you do, is looking at who's on a panel, looking at what your work is doing. And so from that standpoint, I was going through that personally, and then I was looking at what we were doing as a building. And so we've made a concerted effort to put more diversity on what we're posting. And so, that's a small step. Certainly within our series programming, we do a whole bunch of different shows, and we're able to find grants because the ticket sales typically aren't there. We had ALE too, so we're trying to do that too on a programming side. So, but in the digital space, I think it's just really important to make sure you're authentic and not just posting stuff because now's the time to do it, and you didn't realize what was going on, before.
Yeah. Adam, what's your take?
Being authentic, like she said, is key to anything that we're doing, no matter what the subject matter. And I think our fans can see through it, and I think our staff can see through it if it's not. And you have the best uptake on any piece of content if it's real and it's authentic and it hits home. And when we look at our Pride plan for the month of June, we're doing kind of like what Dave said. We're engaging different organizations, and we're leveraging our voice for these different elements and what can we do, but we're making sure that we're not being a bandwagoner. And that's, especially for Pride, that's where you see a lot of organizations just hop on the bandwagon to do so. And I think it's important that you take a different approach from that and make sure that what you're saying has meaning, and otherwise just posting something for the sake of posting something isn't necessarily always the best idea.
Yeah. Marissa, do you have any thoughts on how you're rolling out to multiple markets?
We kind of, in situations, really in any situation, we leave it up to each of the venues. As you said, I mean, we have, our venues are located in red states, blue states, and we don't feel that we can just put out, it's funny, Ike and I had this conversation 2 weeks ago about, should we create a statement for all of our venues to use on their platforms? And we came back and said, no, like it has to be, and like, Shanae said yesterday, it has to be authentic. Like I can't sit in my home in Connecticut and write a statement for my venue in Pittsburgh or my venue in Florida. Like, so what we try to do is work with each of those venues to create something. If they want to create it, if they want to, it's more for just to bounce ideas off of our feedback, but it wasn't, we can't I would never say you have to post this or you have to do this, and nor would our corporate office. So it's more of, you know, we let them take the lead and we're here to support them and how they want to respond.
Have you guys put together Pride messaging and assets, or has that been
No, like, again, like, you know, I mean, you know, Adam kind of made me think of this, like, it's just because it's a national holiday, it's not like National Beer Day. It's not like National Chocolate Day where you can post a funny thing and put it up there. It's, you know, you have to be, again, you, not to overuse the word, but you have to be authentic. You have to take your community. You have to take what is in your backyard. Who are your partners? Who are your resources? You know, what makes your community thrive? And that's how you should create your messaging. And that's how you should really be thoughtful in what you're posting, and not just post to post. So no, we, you know, again, we don't create a standard image, a standard look to say, hey, use this and put your message in. Again, you know, you have to be creative to your area.
What, getting back to a little bit more, less on the messaging, but more of the action, what have been some of your guys' biggest successes? Adam, maybe I'll throw it to you with your concerts, and what's been happening? How is it going?
It's weird to say that we're busier than normal, but I guess it's a good thing. But yeah, we've pivoted our business quite significantly when we came into shutdown. You know, so my senior director of marketing really sat down and went, what are we going to do here? To make sure that we're saving people's jobs and make sure that we're bringing in money and not just spending money. And that's always the big challenge, I think, for everybody on this call, is marketing is often just seen as a cost center, and it often is just a cost center. So the challenge that we had was, how do we make marketing create a new property and create a new revenue stream so that we're not just a cost center forking out money. So what we did was we worked, you know, there's a couple projects on the go, but the most notable would be working with our sister venue, Live Nation Canada owned and operated Budweiser Stage. Anybody that was here for EAMC last year would remember it from being our closing party. And sadly, we would have been enjoying summer music season here, and in Canada, we don't get outdoor concerts in the winter. So the amphitheater season is very cherished. And Rogers, being one of our partners, who is our one of our main media conglomerates and owns most of the radio stations and most of the TV channels, they had an opening in broadcast space because of lack of sports. Budweiser had some surplus budget and some things that they needed to do because they weren't spending against sports. There's nothing to activate against. And so it was the perfect storm where we decided, let's put the shows that would have been at Budweiser Stage into a television series. And you know, once we came into lockdown, everybody was doing live streams, but a Zoom call or an Instagram feed just wasn't necessarily the quality we wanted to go after. So jumping through the hoops of what you can and cannot do during quarantine and lockdown obviously was a challenge, but we were able to produce a television series every Saturday night, 8 p.m. prime time on City TV, coast to coast in Canada, and stream it on the Live from Home platform as well at the same time. And we just learned that, we haven't announced this yet, but we just learned that we're extended for 3 more episodes, which is great news. So this Saturday, we have John Legend performing from his home, which is something that when we started thinking about the show, we didn't ever think we'd be able to land John Legend on the show, but it's worked. And so we've been able to integrate some of our different partners to retain dollars, but also create net new dollars with some of our Live Nation partners across the board. So that's been the biggest thing that's been keeping us busy. It's worked so far.
Vanessa, there was a question about, is your virtual series, are you making money, or is this just, you guys are figuring it out as you go?
Definitely figuring it out as we go. I actually messaged privately, but we are talking to sponsors now to sponsor our virtual series, and we've moved the virtual series from just one venue to another venue. But I'm excited to say that today we went on sale, pre-sale, for 2 drive-in shows. Only 236 cars at one of our venues for Andrew McMahon, sold out, and just added a 3rd show. So that's promising, and that is definitely revenue generating.
Mm-hmm. Definitely raise your hand or jump in if you have any successes as well. I know we only have 10 or 15 more minutes left, but would love to hear if anybody has had some successes. Shani, what's been your biggest successes?
That my kids are not in this call right now.
I know we need
really
more
close.
kids and puppies
It's really close.
kind of lame.
I know. It's really close. We got into the general area, but then we were able to play a little defense. So
I want somebody to barge through that door behind Marissa right now. But
Just wait, I'm sure it's about to happen.
So I'm kind of excited for Adam's series with John Legend, mainly so if Chrissy will make an appearance, that's another exciting thing too. The kind of to wrap everything up, Jim, I think that it's important to acknowledge every stage like you were talking about, but for everyone who is on this Zoom call is likely an optimist, likely is glass half full, because otherwise you wouldn't be trying to come up with whatever plans and schemes you can to sell tickets for something that you know in your deepest, quietest moments is not going to sell one ticket, and you may not buy a ticket, but you know that you need to convince other people to buy it for that insert show here. We are going to come back as an industry. So what does that look like, right? It's important to validate every stage that we're in, but as we prepare, mentally prepare, what are the things that we could do differently moving forward? What are the honest conversations we need to have? Are there resources that we're just like, we need to transition, you know, ways of doing things? What can we do to individually be better? And what, you know, self-reflection, and then what as an organization can we do?
Mhm.
And, you know, for those of us who are working at this time, to acknowledge the spot that we're in and acknowledge the spot that other people are in who aren't working. So it's really an opportunity to step outside yourself.
Tammy, what are you planning for this fall?
Well, as I said earlier, we just moved our last season show into 2021. And so we're, now I've got open dates. So I've reached out to our local community theater that typically can set 210 in their spot. And with the social distancing guidelines that Iowa is under, they can only probably fit in 50. So we're going to look to open our big house at 2,600, and we can safely do their 200 people. So we're doing that with the theater department on campus. We've reached out to a couple of the smaller theaters in Des Moines. And so we're going to attempt to just do the 300. We can't pull out seats. Again, we're in a theater. So that's what we're looking to do. So I think we're going to be busy with that. So, because for all of those organizations that we've talked to, the community theaters, like, we can't go dark for a season. If we go dark for a season, we're not going to make any money. We're just going to try to cover overhead and do everything with donations, but we can't be gone a year. We'll never come back. And so we're really looking at those smaller organizations. I'm going to reach out to the Story County Children's Theater to see where they're at. So we're doing that. We'll probably do a lot of our singer-songwriter showcases that we started about 18 months ago, and do those on stage, because in the smaller room we set them in right now, we can't socially distance, but if we put them on our big stage, we can fit in 80 people, and that's what we're looking for. So we are really trying to adjust and keep busy, though in different ways, yet still kind of with that community aspect of who can we help out in the community.
So not going dark, I just want to jump on that because I think that's huge. You know, I'm in the Christmas space with Nutcracker, and how do you, I mean, this is a key time. I mean, and it's the same in the summer for, you know, outdoor rooms. I mean, how do you avoid just going completely dark? So digital, like Vanessa was talking about the curated series, you know, so we've got some products. I mean, it's streaming video, but we're going to sell it. And, you know, I think the age of free video is definitely over in our category. We got to start selling this stuff, and we got to start putting a value on it, and add what you can, in the stream, unique content, what have you. But one thing that we all have in common is we all have databases. We're all data companies. We all have venues, but those are dark. So use that data to move product online. And, you know, we're talking about selling Zoom meet and greets. And I think Zoom meet and greets for money are going to be with us forever now. I think there's no reason why that goes away. And I think there's ways that we gotta keep the lights on and actually make a couple bucks here. And I think we got to put a premium on some of this content.
Yeah, I mean, you think there's a lot of opportunity in digital, and I mean, there's opportunity in chaos, right? And it's a big opportunity for everybody to evolve. It's a bigger opportunity for us marketers to create solutions as opposed to just trying to sell tickets and take something that's been pushed down. The big challenge with the digital space is what's unique about it, right? What's going to, especially as we head into summer when people are going to be outside and going into patios and you're asking for a ticket price, like there's an opportunity there for sure. But the big challenge that I know that I always face is when we look at that is what's going to be unique about it, and why would I buy a ticket to it when I can get, because there's so much free content, right? So I think ultimately as an industry, as we start to evolve into that and it's the new norm, you know, hopefully the industry evolves with it, but it's going to be that, what's that hook to make the purchase happen.
Ed, I'm looking for you, but I know you had your hand raised. Where are you? Jump in.
Here. Can you see me? Oh, I got to unmute. Wait.
There we go. There
you go, Ed.
What do you got?
Well, I just want to let people know some of the things that some of our venues, our Arena Network venues are working on. You asked what some of these venues are doing. Yeah, we do have a couple of venues that are working on these drive-in concerts, but one of them in particular down in South Texas has been doing a series of concerts each weekend. They started back 2 weeks ago and had 3 shows over a weekend, 2 country shows and a Hispanic show. And it was a series, did very well, did about 1,100, 1,200 cars over the weekend. They've got another 2 shows starting coming up this weekend, 1 country show and 1 Hispanic show. And that building expects that they may actually continue this all summer. With every couple of weeks, they've already got something planned for July 4th weekend. So instead of just doing one-offs, they're trying to do series and trying to get people to come back on a regular basis. And so far, it seems to be working. We also have a venue that actually did a high school graduation live at their venue up in Montana. Now, there haven't been a whole lot of COVID cases up there, so they were able to get their health departments to give them the okay to do it. They did 1,200 people in the building at a time, did 3 high school graduations in one day. So they got 3,600 people through their building and got people coming back. And they're working with PBR to try to get an event in there. Probably about 3,000 people. It's about an 8,000 seat building. And we're working actually too with some comedy agents. We think comedy is a big area that we can potentially do in arenas, because comics are willing to take the shot where they would normally play a theater. In order to make the money work, they're going to play arenas and socially distance inside the arena. And so you may have a 10,000 seat arena that's only going to sell 3,000 or 4,000 seats, but comics, because it's not a huge production, we can make it work. And the comics seem very interested in doing it because they just want to get out of the house and get in front of a crowd. So that seems to be a big area of interest as far as bringing in some events and getting people back in the building. We're also working with agents to try to figure out how we can make the deals work once we do reopen. Agents are telling us that they think arenas are going to be the new theaters. And for those of you who are running theaters, I'm sorry to say, but agents are saying it may be very difficult to bring content back into theaters because the money won't work if you have to socially distance. But if you take those same acts and put them in an arena setting and socially distance, you can get closer to making the money work. It's not aesthetically as pleasing, but when acts need to get out and make money, that's what they want to do.
Yeah. Well, I know we're right at 4 o'clock, and I know a lot of us have to jump. We could keep going for another 2 or 3 hours with this crowd. But Paul, I was wondering, I think a lot of us were looking for like a central place where we could store resources that everybody's finding. And I know we've got the Facebook message board, but maybe we can look at adding something on the EAMC website where it can be kind of this, aggregating all of this, the successes and resources. Even if it's a shared Dropbox folder or something that we can kind of all access, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're definitely expanding where we can on EAMC's website. You all may have seen like the Career Center that we posted on there. So yeah, if you have any other ideas or things you think should be there that haven't been in the past, definitely send them to Kirk, myself, Dave, any of us. We really feel it's important for this conference to kind of expand its role, I guess, in the industry. Like so much of it before was just everyone kind of show up, have a good time, party, and listen to people speak. And now I think it's more important than ever to kind of network with each other, share ideas, see what's working in some markets, what's not in others, and also just lift each other up as we all try to like recover and find jobs. So be sure to send us any feedback you have, and then definitely join the EAMC
Dave, do you have anything else?
Group on Facebook if you have it.
Wrap it up.
Only that, gosh, there's so many amazing and I use the term beautiful minds here that we didn't even get a chance to hear from. So, if you are, if you have strong opinions on any of these topics, or you have something you want to share, obviously you can always reach out through the EAMC board. But if you have a voice that wants to be heard, you are welcome at our table. And we often reach out to the same folks that we see time and time again and we try to incorporate new faces, but it's tough, especially when we're not in these big group settings. I see so many people that I talk to only at the conference. Whether it's Nina or Cynthia, that I would love to hear voices and opinions from some other folks and input. So if you have something that that you think, hey, I got something that needs to be discussed, and whether it's you who discusses it or a topic, please, again, feel free to reach out to us and share that anytime, or jump in right now.
Well, thank you. I mean, selfishly, thank you all for joining so I could see everybody's faces. This is great.
Thanks, everyone.
All righty. Unless you guys have anything else. Good to see you.
Stay tuned. Happy hour info coming soon, plus another session in 2 weeks.
All right. Be well.
Good background, Jim Delaney.
Yeah, just for you, Cal.
Thank you. Go Wild.
Go Wild.
Hey, Cliff. Hey, Suzanne.